As you were dragged through the soft soil of the garden under the blinding sunlight, you squeeze your eyes shut, overwhelmed by the sudden brightness and warmth. You could not walk, and so your frozen knees scraped against the dirt. You struggle to keep your eyes open, Katsuki and Edro's words echoing in your head despite knowing it was not needed now. The guards carried you all the way to your room, dumping you into the waiting arms of the handmaidens. You were barely conscious, but heard Akina's voice, ordering for blankets and bed warmers. You were placed carefully into the bed before being shrouded with blankets and warmth you could not find the origins of. The heat gradually invaded your body, and finally, you succumbed to sleep with the faint feeling of someone stroking your hair. When you awoke, it was to a thick blanket and the dimness of the fireplace. You blink your eyes open, your heart mourning that the past few days were not a drawn-out, awful nightmare, and that you had not woken to Kirishima's purrs or Katsuki's gentle chides to wake up. I did warn you, little dove. You turned to your side to find Akina, dutifully watching over you. Her eyes are as despondent as before, but gained inklings of sympathy. "How was your first night in the dungeon?" she inquired. You turned back to the canopy atop your bed, mumbling quietly, "Cold." Akina hummed, her gaze far into memories. The young lord's grandfather used to say, "Never strike when you are angry, for that sparks fire and resilience. Rather let the cold break their soul, then they will never recover." The young lord learned well from his grandfather. Refuse him again, and the cold and dark of the dungeon will slowly suck your soul in its abyss. Her words sunk into your skin. The darkness of the dungeon had already tainted your soul with the taste of death. It ate away at your resistance to fight. Had it not been for Edro and Katsuki being with you, it may have been more difficult to maintain your will. But what happened to the people sent there who were not fortunate enough to have friends? You turn your tired, subdued gaze to Akina. "Are you speaking from experience?" Akina met your stare with vacancy. Her soul had already been stolen. Be grateful that you were there for a mere 2 days. I imagine the young lord did not want to damage his new toy before he could properly play with it. Akina rose from the bed. "Rest. Be grateful to the fates that the young lord is preparing for a banquet to commence in the coming days. You must prepare yourself, little dove. You will not survive another journey to the dungeons." Akina left you to your exhaustion. Despite having just awoken, your limbs were heavy, and your panic was slow after your ordeal. You stay up at the canopy, knowing full well that staying here was not an option, despite how impossible Akina made the situation seem. But she was right about one thing. You needed to prepare. Prepare to escape. In the days that followed your recovery, you tested the limits of your captivity. You were permitted to leave your room and tread the hallways of the mansion. However, your leash halted at any entrance. You'd ask the guards at the back garden tentatively if you could visit your friends, but they had vehemently denied you. Later, you were informed by Akina to not worry about them. The young lord understands that your compliance is reliant on them. He will keep them alive. Barely, but alive nonetheless. That offered you minimal comfort. If the guards were constantly on duty at all exits and guarding the dungeon, how were you supposed to get to them? You lamented over your near-impervious obstacles, over a bowl of warm porridge Akina had provided you for breakfast. The one thing that gave you comfort was that Getten had not taken your belongings. Your gem, along with a few other items in your satchel, was safely with you. However, it seemed to have gone dormant. Before, the gem nearly thrummed with energy, or well, magic, but now it was akin to an empty diamond. Still, you kept it close, reasoning that the same magic dampeners that had affected Katsuki and Edro had affected it the same. You stab into the porridge with your spoon, looking out the window and into the back garden, where the shed housing the dungeon lay unsuspecting. One of those stoic guards held the keys. If perchance you could find a way to sneak out, you were sure you could take just the two. First, you would need a weapon, and a lot of faith in the skills Katsuki and Edro taught you. A weapon you could only obtain from a god. Second, you'd need an opening. The banquet seemed the most opportune time to attempt an escape. You'd viewed the extravagance of the preparations and reasoned it could serve as some sort of distraction. Lastly, you needed to break Katsuki and Edro out. Would you be able to take out the guards at the entrance of both the back garden and the dungeon? The more you thought about it, the more impossible it seemed. But you knew you had to try. Katsuki and Edro couldn't protect you this time, so you had to step up. Among the concepts of your plan, you considered another potential issue. Akina had heavily implied that you would be required to serve Getten after the banquet. You paused, swallowing thickly. That may be your way out. If you trick Getten into thinking you were willing, and attack him while he was off guard. There was a window in his room as well. You might be able to render him unconscious and climb out. That would be a way for you to get into the back garden stealthily and without alerting the guards at the door. With your training, it seemed plausible, if you squint. The day of the banquet left you anxiously pacing your quarters, while trying to figure out how you would swipe a dagger from the guards and conceal it in your garments. It was while you fretted about your room a few hours before the banquet commenced that you were paid an unwanted visit. The door opens, and you expect Akina to walk through. However, Lord Getten appeared, his jaw apparently healed. He was dressed in deep blue clothing, mirroring that of a princess attire. It was laid with gold and red thread, and had golden tassels at his shoulders. Were it not for his sinister smile or the malicious glee glinting in his eyes, you may have viewed him as charming. "May I come in?" he asked, though he brushed past you swiftly before you could open your mouth. He strode to the bed, but you lingered nervously by the door. "I brought you a gift," he announced cheerily. "It was brought to my attention that perhaps you were but frazzled by the night's events that led to you becoming my concubine, and did not react in an appropriate way. But I hope we can rectify that, going forward." The prince placed the box he carried on the bed ottoman. You glanced between him and the lilac box, tied with a maroon bow. "Well?" he questioned, when you made no move towards it. Reluctantly, you approached him, despite every nerve in your body tugging your limbs in the other way. You carefully slide the ribbons apart and lift the lid. Inside was red satin material. Getten came up behind you suddenly, and you jumped, but he only reached over you and into the box. He lifted the material to reveal a new concubine outfit. It was just as loose and flowing as the rest, however, not as translucent. "I want you to wear this tonight at the banquet," Getten said softly into your ear. Your body stiffened at his closeness. "I would love to tear it off you when the night is over. I should hope you remember your previous misfortune and behave better on our next encounter." I believe I have given you enough time to adjust. And don't forget that your friends' lives hang by my thread, which I could easily cut should I not have compliance." He stared fixatedly at your face, waiting for your reaction. You manage a simple nod. Your tongue as weighty as lead in your mouth, and unable to form words. "Great!" Getten exclaimed, and finally distanced himself from your body. But it was only when the door shut that the tension rushed from you. You collapsed onto the bed, your eyes misting from the anxiety and dread you felt. The weight of their escape bear down on your shoulders, a boulder you were struggling to carry on your own. Tears slip down your cheeks and you hide your face in your palms. But your sobs were cut short. Hands grabbed your wrists. You flinch away before realizing it was just Aina. She sighed. "There is no time for that now," she said gently, taking out a handkerchief and dabbing your face. "It would be hard for me to conceal the puffiness in your eyes if you cry. Cry after if you must, but not now while there are guests awaiting your presence." You sniffed, your panic subdued by the brush of the handkerchief. Aina placed her hand under your chin, her touch light and guiding. Your eyes met hers. You could not be sure what she saw in them, but you noticed the twitch at her lips. For a moment or two, it appeared as though she was trying to smile. Her efforts were in vain, however, as her lips dropped back into their regular stance. "It is time to get ready, little dove," she said solemnly. Akina's hands treaded along your body with the same care she had taken on the first day here. It had been a little over a week since you arrived, and yet felt an eternal loop of trepidation that lasted eons. After she'd finished patting makeup on your face, twisting your hair in an elegant style, and slipping your new attire on, she stepped back and asked, "Are you ready? Are you ready to serve the Lord?" is what she meant. But as you stared in the mirror, finding yourself through the layers of beautification, you questioned whether you were ready to escape. "Yes," you answer. Satisfied, Aina stepped back and gestured for you to follow. She led you through the hallways to the ballroom. Large oak doors separated you from boisterous chatter beyond, and what you dreaded awaited before you and the doors. Getten's lips stretched wide when he saw you approach. He held out his arm as though he were a chivalrous knight, and not the wicked king that robbed his land for his greed. "It is time for your introduction." You hoped your disgust was not too obvious. You force yourself to take his arm. Aina moves to the door and knocks twice. The doors open slowly, as though to draw out their grand arrival. "Don't forget to smile," Getten warned slowly. There was an array of sharp, surprised intakes of breaths, and excited whispers filled the space after. Your nervous eyes skim your noble audience, all of which dressed with a level of extravagance you had not witnessed in this world, and none of their dresses remotely resembled your fabrics. It was clear that Getten had marked you as other, your title immediately clear to all around, a concubine. Young Lord Getten's first concubine, they spoke in hushed tones to one another. They walked through the gathered people to the raised platform at the forefront of the crowd. They circled the long dark wood table upon it to its center. A silky cerulean cloth lined the middle of the table, and upon it lay silver trays heaped with food. There were only 2 tall chairs behind the table. You assumed it was for you and Getten. You thought the space and pile of food was a bit much for just the 2 of you. However, the rest of the ballroom was not far off. As you walked the wide hall and gazed across the faces of noble men and women, dressed in elegant fineries and clad with intricate jewels. You could see similar lengthy tables overflowing with food and drink. Candelabras were spaced out but absent of a flame. In its place were thumb-sized gems emanating white light. The little gems had bigger brothers along the walls where torches might be, and sisters strung on black ropes across the ceiling. Shades of azure and cobalt adorned the ballroom in forms of drapes, banners, and fully bloomed flowers snipped from their stems. It was breathtaking, and you couldn't appreciate it, not with your mind cluttered with anxiety surrounding your escape. There was a pinch at your arm and a sharp hiss. "Stop looking around like that!" You command your eyes forward, attempting to force a smile. They stand at the backs of their chairs, and Getten exposes his teeth to their audience. "Thank you all for coming to welcome my first official concubine. They are truly a rare treasure among the rubble, as you can see, and very dear to my heart." He bends and kisses the back of your wrist. You clench your jaw, resisting the urge to yank your hand back from repulsion. A babble of ahs breathes through the crowd, and you avert your eyes in an attempt to look shy. Getten rose, his pupils fixated on you like a warning or a threat. You were not playing your part well. He turned to his guests and announced, "They're bashful, but that will definitely change tonight." The guests chuckled obnoxiously, a few shooting knowing looks at their familiars. You swallowed bile in your throat. "Please, everyone, enjoy the festivities," Getten announced, beginning the night. The crowd dispersed across the ballroom, circles gathering around the food, drink, and chatter. "Sit down," Getten snapped. You jumped, not realizing he had already sat. You hurried to take your seat. "Pour out wine." A servant hastily moved to fulfill his order. Once the goblet was full, Getten grabbed it and shoved it into your hands. "Come now, drink. This is all for you. Have some fun." You looked down at the purple liquid and up at him. His eyes had not lost the hostile light. You brought the goblet to your mouth, and Getten pushed your hand up, forcing you to gulp down the wine. He relented just as you began to fear it may spill. You set the goblet down. "There, wasn't that nice?" You didn't answer, the effects of the alcohol already washing over you. Getten pursed his lips. "You've become quiet since your night in the dungeons. Did it really break your spirit so quickly?" You hadn't realized until he mentioned it, but had you even said a word to him since seeing him again? "Ah, Ambassador, so good to see you." You look up to find an elderly man had approached the table. "Young Lord Getten, what a fine choice you've made. Your father will be most happy once he returns from his travels." "Thank you, Ambassador. That is high praise from someone as worthy as yourself." The ambassador straightened a little, and then asked brashly, "Young man, may I be so bold as to ask for a dance with your beauty? They're so gorgeous. I simply must welcome them properly." Your body turns rigid, and you freeze under the sickening and predatory beady eyes of the old man. "I'm afraid I must decline, Ambassador. I would like to be their first dance of the evening, but perhaps as the night wears on?" Getten flashed a charming smile. "Of course, young lord." The ambassador returned with a grin, and departed. Getten rolled his eyes as he turned his back. "Greedy little pervert, doesn't know his age." He glanced over at you curiously. "Were you worried I'd give you to him?" You jerk your head in a nod. "No, I don't like the idea of his dirty hands getting on you." "And I don't like the idea of your icy ones on me," you think to yourself. "Eat," Getten said, grinning into his wine. "You will need all your strength for tonight." You press your lips into a thin line, knowing that you would indeed need strength to overcome this night. You force your resistant body to chew and swallow the meat before you, served by the handmaiden. The night draws on with Getten talking aimlessly and you eating obediently, while you scan the floor for the most vulnerable-looking guard. You were not so brazen to think you could pull off any type of escape without something to arm yourself with. As you take your next bite, you pause, blinking down at your hands in disbelief. How could you be this stupid? You glance over at the handmaiden and Getten, whose attention lay on the crowd, and accidentally tip your wine glass over. Getten jerked his chair backwards, away from the wine. You push away in a fluster, apologizing immediately. "I'm so sorry, I don't know how I—" "Oh, so you do speak," Getten says, amused. "Never mind that. In any case, it's time to dance. Clear this while we take to the floor. Yes, Lord Getten." Getten rises and reluctantly you take his outstretched hand. As you stand, you subtly press your fingers to the frills of your outfit, relaxing at the hardness of the steak knife. The sea of guests part as they step onto the dance floor. Thankfully, or not, depending on your perspective, Getten placed his hand upon the exposed skin of your waist, rather than the purposed fabric at your hips. You place your hand on his shoulders unsurely, and he tugs you closer, until you could look over his golden tassels. "Isn't it nice when you don't resist?" Getten whispered in your ear. "Don't you see now how wonderful your life could be?" "What life? Serving as a doll to be dressed up and played with? Even if you had been a part of this world, you could not imagine ever being happy here in this icy mansion." Getten's hands dug into your skin. "Answer me," he hissed. You swallow a pebble. "Yes." Warmth caressed your thigh, and some tension leaves your body. The gem began to heat periodically, like the reassuring strokes of a friend. With its pulsing, you did not feel so alone. Just a little longer, you think. Everything will work out. You would see Katsuki and Edro soon. You didn't realize how soon. From the very door that Getten and you had entered, Katsuki and Edro burst through. The guests all gasped at their arrival, stumbling back and away from the barbarian and the crimson dragon. Before you could even begin to wonder how they'd managed to escape, you turned to Getten to see him turning red with anger. Words began to shape. He was going to give the orders. He was going to order the guards to kill them. Because what use would it be to put them back in the dungeons they could escape from? Or even put them somewhere else where it would be impossible for you to get to them? You panic and look fruitlessly for a way to stop him. They had to escape tonight. They had to. Use me. "Lords and ladies," you shout, surprising even yourself. All heads turn to you, even Getten, shocked but seething. "I am not Lord Getten's only special guest of the evening. Along with celebrating my indictment as his first concubine, Lord Getten has another announcement to make." Getten's hands claw into your arm. Frost races up your skin, but you could not risk pulling away. Instead, you place your hand on his chest, smiling with as much love as you could fake. Katsuki and Edro stared, their faces slack, likely experiencing a whiplash from the expectant battle to whatever you were doing. However, by their lack of interjection, you knew they trusted you to continue. They were so greatly outnumbered in this room with guards and nobility that could possess a number of abilities and loyalty to only gold. which Getten had plenty of. But if you could steer them away from that with a spectacle. As some of you may know, Lord Getten found me, a commoner, with my 2 companions at the marketplace, and it was truly love at first sight. Once he offered to make me his concubine, I could not refuse. You closed your eyes as though you were in pain. But fate has given us a mission that we cannot ignore. You reach into the bunched red fabric, closing your hand around the gem, comforted by its thrum under your fingers. You held the gem up and pretended not to be startled when a strong electric shock rippled from your hand and through the room. Noble men and women stood frozen in the presence of its power, and even you, being magically inept, could feel its energy and impact. Getten had even released you and stepped back, staring at the gem in a new light. Fate has given me this gem that is sought out by many and could cause a war to break out. Myself and my companions are the only ones that can destroy it. But for that, you bring the gem protectively to your chest and look back longingly at Getten, who slowly rid himself of his awe. I must leave my new love. This banquet is not only my welcome, but my farewell, until I can return again and be reunited with you, Lord Getten. Sounds of endearment fluttered through the crowd, and you knew many were fooled by your performance. Please, everyone, give your appreciation to your Lord, who is graciously helping us save the world. You shout, clapping your hands together, followed closely by the rest of the ballroom. Getten's jaw was clenched tightly, his eyes glinting with anger, but he knew better than to let it show. You had gambled on the spur of the moment, but how lucky you were that Getten's reputation seemed to matter more than his prize. Once the applause died, Getten approached. "They are extraordinary," he said, as he grabbed your hand that did not hold the gem. "Although I may allow them to leave me for this short while, destiny will return them to me. Even if I must search the depths of the abyss, they will be back in my arms." You could hear the truth in his poetic declaration. He would allow you to leave, now, but would hunt you down as long as it took to drag you back. "Your absence will weigh heavy on my heart, my lord," you reply. Getten pulled you close swiftly and pressed lips forcefully to yours, his touch bruising. Despite your disgust and your urge to shove him away again, you clench your fists around the gem to prevent that. Don't focus on him. Focus on how close you are to getting out. The room erupts in another round of applause, white noise against the heaving repulsion flooding your body. Getten pulls away, conveying his threat slowly. "When I find you again, the dungeons will appear a happy dream." You step away from him, elated for breathable air. You bow. "I thank you for your kindness, my lord. This week has truly been a dream. Until we meet again." As steadily as you could manage, you walked to Edro and Katsuki, who stood with so many conflicting emotions that you could not bear to look at them. "Shall we go to the gardens?" you say, plastering a smile upon your face and walking straight past them and down the hall. You felt them flank your sides, walking wordlessly behind you, and felt the irrational urge to tell them not to be so close. The crowd of nobility trailed behind them excitedly. "Shift," you whisper to Edro when they set foot on the dewy grass, "before he changes his mind." Edro obeys, transforming into his massive draconic self and inciting breaths of awe. He leans down for you and Katsuki to climb on, and takes off without finishing their farewell act. Just as his powerful wings flap to lift them off the ground, you catch a glimpse of Akina in the window. She stares with her empty eyes as you carry out an escape she had forgotten how to dream of. You feel sorrow for her and others that might follow after you depart, but nothing save relief for yourself as the clouds began to glide over your skin and awaken goosebumps. You jump as Katsuki draped his cape over your shoulders, startled despite him being right behind you. He says nothing to you, but orders, "Edro, get us as far away as you can from here."